When parents harmed you as a child, it can really damage the way that you perceive other people, how you feel towards them, and the way that you form attachments to them. And it's one thing to know this, understanding that the problem you're having in relationships today stems from unhealed wounds from neglect and abuse when you were small. But what can you do? You might be someone who runs into relationships seeking that connection and validation you didn't get, and probably because of the rushing in, you're not getting it. Or you might be someone who fixates on someone who's completely wrong for you and unavailable. Either way, trauma-driven attachments generate ongoing trauma and a life full of emptiness that comes when no real love can get to you. Hurt has a tendency to pile on hurt, and it can feel like something in you is dying. And if that grieves you, if you feel sad about that loss of love or lack of it, it's a sign of life. It's a sign that it's your heart's desire and that it's time not to give up, but to open up. And I'll tell you why. All right, my letter today is from a woman I'll call Amyra, and she's feeling that deadness inside after all she's been through. And she writes, "Hi, Anna. My mother died when I was 7 years old, and I come from a very conservative, traditional Indian Muslim family where arranged marriages are the norm. So after my mother died, my dad did not date. Rather, he married a cousin of my mother's via an arranged marriage. This stepmom was a classic textbook narcissist." I'm circling this with the fairy pencil here, and I'm going to come back to things I've circled, but let's read all the way through and I'll see if I can help you, Amyra. "I was made out to be the black sheep, and my little brother was the golden child, since boys are preferred in Indian Muslim families. Things really started to ramp up when I became a teenager, where her narcissistic abuse toward me really started to increase in severity and frequency. My stepmother was very beautiful and knew it. She fooled around with a couple of my dad's friends as soon as she got immigration. She left my father high and dry. In his anger and in his inability to regulate his feelings, he threatened her and she ran off to the cops. They put him in detention for 6 months. This happened to me in my senior year in high school. I started going into therapy about 5 years ago, and it was through therapy I understood that my stepmother was a narcissist, my father was her codependent, and both of them were emotionally immature and neglectful parents. They did not set out healthy examples of relationships, how to fight properly in a healthy way, respecting boundaries they didn't understand, any of that stuff in hindsight. Because of the lack of a healthy maternal figure in my life, I now realize I have problems with respect to having healthy attachment patterns and being attracted to available men." Okay. "Until recently, I didn't even pick up the fact that every single man that I've ever been really attracted to was a narcissist as well. In one case, I fell head over heels in love with a university professor of mine in my first year of university at a time when my father had been put into detention for the second time. I now realize that all the qualities that were missing and that I would have admired if I had a normal dad were at the time personified in this professor. He was extremely handsome, super intelligent, educated, professional, and seemed to have his act together. The diametrical opposite of my father. This professor used to make eyes at me. He was actually an outrageous flirt, and he encouraged that flirtation. He loved having the attention. Practically every girl on campus was after him as well, and it in some ways gratified me that this catch was giving me the attention. You also have to remember, growing up as a teenager, my stepmother did whatever she could to drill that message into me that I was ugly and unattractive and had nothing to offer, and that the best I could ever do was to have another arranged marriage similar to hers to a man similar to my father. When I graduated from university, I sent a note to the professor to see if he wanted to meet for coffee. He did. During the first meeting, it all came out that he was married and he had just recently had a baby girl. I basically wanted to just stop talking to him, but something was kind of nudging me to keep talking to him. So for years afterwards, we would email each other, meet for coffee if I was in town. I should stress that it never became physical between us. It was more of an emotional affair, and yes, I was accepting crumbs. He encouraged it in many ways as well. He never told me to stop because in hindsight, I now realize I was narcissistic supply to him. Then the Me Too movement hit my old university, and this professor, among many others, was outed as a serial sexual harasser and that I was just one of many, many female students he engaged with over the years. I'm pretty sure there were others who crossed the line and had sexual relationships with him, because I always got the feeling with him that he was just waiting for me to make the first move, but I never did. Something told me if I did, I would be lost forever. Finally, about 5 years ago, I started going to therapy in earnest, and that's when I figured out all this stuff, and I just stopped talking to him. I went cold turkey, gray rock, and I realized that all that self-talk that I used to think that he was my soulmate was all BS. I also realized it was safer to have this limerent relationship and be emotionally closed off and unavailable to anyone else than to actually have a real relationship with someone, since I had no idea how to assess, is someone a good relationship material. In some way, that professor also kind of ruined it for me. He was the whole package: looks, smarts, brains, came from a wealthy family, etc. Everyone else I saw around me was just paled in comparison. After I had my aha moment in therapy and figured this out, all those warm, fuzzy feelings, the longing for him, the wanting him, fighting against the unfairness of the situation, just disappeared into thin air. My taxi cab sign that had for over 20 years said occupied now went off, and I'm hoping to go toward an available signal. Okay. I was this professor's student in, 30 years ago almost, 29 years ago. I met him for coffee for the first time 3 years after that. I was in the throes of him until 5 years ago. I've been free of this limerent relationship for 5 years, I would say. I actually really want to be in a normal, healthy, available, emotionally stable relationship, but when I go on dating sites and look at people on the bus or the street, I don't actually find myself attracted to anybody. I know this sounds weird, but I actually find 99% of people out there really unattractive. I'm open to being friends with them and talking to them, but there's no spark, no spice, no chemistry. I haven't felt that for another person in a very long time. I'm terrified I'm never going to be attracted to another person again, and wonder if I may be asexual or aromantic, or if I'm attracted to someone again, it's going to be another narcissist, which is the last thing I need or want. How do I find that spark or the chemistry again with somebody else in a good way, in a healthy relationship with someone who is emotionally available and who I find physically attractive? And that is our letter from Amyra. Thank you. Let's see if I can help you. All right. I don't think you're alone with this, Amyra. I do get a number of letters from people who are like they're not feeling it right now. They've had so many bad experiences, or such a long bad experience, that there's something feeling dead inside them. But I have an insight about this that I want to share with you, and this, we'll see how you receive it. You can decide if you want to use my advice or not. All right, so I'm just going to go through this. So you have this traditional Indian Muslim family. Your mother died and your dad got together with this woman who really was not good to you. And I guess you went to therapy and you've gotten these names for what was going on, and I hope that was helpful to you, that she's a narcissist, he's a codependent. And one thing I find interesting, though, is the language you use about your dad actually going to jail for at least twice for abusive behavior. It's weird how you couched it and just said, oh, because of his inability to regulate his feelings and his anger about her behavior. That, to me, that was a little bit of a flag. It was a bit of a flag that you saw her as purely evil, and his behavior was just totally understandable. Actually, you know, everybody's expected. You didn't say exactly what it was. You know, it was his anger and inability to regulate feelings. She called the cops, and he was in jail for 6 months, in detention. Yeah, it sounds like he hit her. It sounds like it. Like, what else would get you in prison for 6 months? So I'm sorry, I just want to say this. Like, if you're in denial about what that was, about what abuse is, if that hitting is not okay, I could see, I'll tell you, I'll just give you a sneak preview of what I'm hearing in you. I think you don't trust yourself. I think you're very good at understanding what other people's motives and problems are. You're having trouble seeing your own role in all of this. I noticed a kind of consistent gravitation to avoidance of agency and responsibility here. You granted it to your father, and your mom, it just sounds like she was awful, so I'm not trying to make excuses, and there's probably nothing we need to say about her if it was so terrible. But yeah, they didn't know how to fight properly in a healthy way. Lots of people with CPTSD don't. They didn't respect boundaries. You see that, but you didn't have a healthy maternal figure. Yeah, I sympathize. And you now realize you have problems having healthy attachment patterns and being attracted to available men. That's so normal. That's very, very normal. You're normal. So we know where these problems come from. We didn't cause it. We didn't invite it. But everything depends now on what are we doing now. So sometimes I think, like if you've been in therapy 5 years and you're still feeling this lack of agency about it, I just want to kind of step in and say, let's really look at your part in all of this, okay? It's your part that you can change. You will trust yourself when you can see what your part in it is, and you feel confident that you won't do that again. Because people who are just, unavailable, sexual harassers, narcissists, codependents, they're all over the place. You will be defenseless against them unless you can see clearly, like, how do you have boundaries? What are the decisions you made that got you into this, okay? So that's what we're going to look at. So then you say that the professor had all these qualities that you admired and wanted and would have had if you had had an ideal dad. And I just want to point out, that's a projection. Your ideal dad would not be having an emotional affair with students. That's not an ideal dad. He had a girl at home and a wife that's just totally destabilizing his family. And you also know now that many people came forward and said he was like a serial sexual harasser. You know what's kind of cool is I know you got that energy from him, but this is kind of like a positive thing. I told you I was going to help you see, like, where was your role in this so that you could find that, because when you know your role, you know what you can change, and you can start to take back your power to have boundaries and not have this kind of, unfulfilling, empty relationship happen again. You have that power. You can't change him. You can't change your parents. You can change yourself. And what I just noticed is you're the one who asked him out for coffee. You emailed him. He said yes. It went on for years, and then you stayed limerent on him for years. So I'll tell you something about limerence. Limerence takes root when your life is yucky, when your life is no fun, when it has no joy or love in it. And so always the first order of business is not to find somebody who actually has what you want. That's not the first order of business. That can come later. The first order of business is to get your joy back, to start having your life. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. So you were saying that, practically every girl on campus was after him. And I was just going to say, that sounds like a projection. I was in college once. I was just not somebody, I had my own problems, but professors was not one of them. I know that most people, that's not really what it is. They have their own relationship things. So it was just a projection that he was this amazing person and everyone wanted him. But I get it. It was validating for you that he would give you his attention, especially when you had gotten so little at home. I get it. And your stepmother had told you were ugly and unattractive and had nothing to offer. So you were saying, you also have to remember growing up as a teenager, she told you that. So I totally get it. Of course you want that validation. But also, he didn't have anything to offer you, but this empty companionship. He had a wife. So I'm just trying to I know this is sort of like taking the cold bucket of water and I'm like, Amyra, here's another bucket for you. He had a wife. He wasn't with you. You didn't get what you wanted. You didn't have it. When I used to go to therapy and I had a limerent relationship, it went on for years that I wasn't called on it. I made no progress. It got worse because we were trying to talk about it and explore my feelings about it and think about why my background led to this. I got so much better one day when I did get called on it. And it was the woman who showed me the techniques I use for healing, the daily practice, writing and meditation techniques. It's down below if anybody wants to see it. I always say that in every video. But the woman who showed it to me, my life was saved. I was so depressed. My life was so empty. All my energy, all the joy in my life was like flying out to this non-entity that didn't exist, this limerent relationship that did not exist. And talking about it was not making it go away. So the woman who showed me these techniques, she was just like, that's a married man. Stop now. We don't do that. That is wrong. And I was just like, what? Well, it felt so good. I'm like, it is wrong. I get it now. And I stopped. I just stopped putting my attention there. And, my life has been full of subsequent problems and ups and downs, but I'm so grateful to the day that somebody said what I'm saying to you. It's like, just draw a line. Don't mess with married men. Just don't. Even if they are flirty, even if they are looking for it, even if they're wonderful and good looking and, bestow status on you, don't do it. It's terrible karma and it will leave your life empty. You no longer have time to lose months or years to being limerent over somebody who's not really your guy, all right? So I'm going to keep bringing you back from the things that you have a good understanding of, like where he went wrong and how he harmed other people. And when you say, you know, you have to understand, it's like, I do understand. You know, you had no validation and you sought it from something that did not validate you. It didn't work, did it? It was some sort of like temporary thing, like doing a drug. But in the long run, you're not feeling good enough right now or confident enough to open your heart. So I'm just trying to say it. This guy, meh, trouble, meh. It's just so good. It's good news. There was a role you played in all of this, in starting it, in staying in it, in returning to it. That is good news, because every part that you had a role in, that's the thing that you can change. That's the thing that you cannot do again. All the other people involved in the things that hurt you, it's done. You can't change it. You can't change the hurt it caused, but you can heal yourself and you can stop re-traumatizing yourself. And I think that's what you need to know. You need to be confident that you will not re-traumatize yourself again by pursuing an unavailable man and giving your heart to a ghost like that. When you are confident about that, then you have a chance. That confident boundary that you're going to have, combined with a joyful life. Now, believe me, there is so much joy and fun possible with or without the guy, with or without anybody in your life. You had asked, did I think that maybe you were asexual or aromantic? I don't know. It doesn't sound like it, because you long for a loving and committed relationship. I respect the heart's desire. That's where I think it is, that's our beacon. That's where we go to. That's our reference point. What do you want? You want what you want. And that means you deserve it. All right? You deserve to be loved. But I totally get why that confidence wouldn't be there. So I was hearing when, this professor, there were a lot of external and material qualities that you kept identifying as like the whole package. And I see this a lot with people who have had like limerence for somebody, especially when there was a status difference. They were the whole package. They were good looking, they were intelligent, they were smart. That's not the whole package. And you had said, oh, it's everything you wish your dad was. I'm just pointing out, a good father does not need to be wealthy, well-educated, good-looking, any of those things. A good father needs to be loyal, faithful, and true to his children, and ideally the children's mother. All right, so I know that can't always work out. I'm a divorced mom myself and remarried. I know that can't always be that way, but I would not say that somebody who was just cheating on his wife all the time is the whole package. That's not what you wanted. So I see this thing where you are giving a pass to your dad and just being like, oh, it was just his anger, his inability to regulate emotions. You're not saying the word, but the only thing I can think of that would get him thrown in jail was violence. And if you were witness to that and you saw that, what a terrible distrust. I don't know, do you have room to let that in, that happened? I'm really not somebody who advocates, oh, you have to grieve, you have to dive in. I am an advocate of getting real. If it's hard for you to deal with feelings that come up when you consider, like, oh, my dad was violent. That's a very damaging thing for a parent to do, is to be violent towards anyone in the house, even if it wasn't you. And he didn't protect you from your stepmom. So I know you know all this, what other people did, but I'm just, you seem to have a confusion about what a good man is. And you know that your dad, he wasn't present for you, but there was something else going on there that was no good. So you know what? This is what's so good. So it's been like 30 years since all this started. And that means you're somewhere in the neighborhood of my age. And what's so beautiful about being this age is we truly do have agency. No matter what happened in the past, it's all about how we're going to take care of ourselves now, what we're going to choose for ourselves now, how we're going to fill our lives with purpose and meaning and joy. And I'll tell you one of the things that I think is very important. Before you get into looking at how am I going to find the guy, what do I do about this lack of attraction, I think that attraction is like lightning striking. We don't have a lot of control over who we're attracted to. It's not always healthy who we're attracted to. It's not something we choose, attraction. But I can speak for myself and say that, I used to be attracted to unavailable and inappropriate people with grave life problems that I didn't really want to bring into my life, but it was this weird, self-defeating behavior I had. And I didn't change it by saying I'm not going to be attracted to that anymore. I changed it when I cleaned up my own life and all the problems that I was having. I started to take steps up as a person to be diligent, to be on time to things, to be presentable every day. I used to be just run ragged. I was just like, I'm so tired, I'm so late, I'm so busy. And I started to really take care of my life, and then I started to clear up the things that I had done that had hurt other people. And a natural consequence of that is I started to feel secure and safe to go. I took trips by myself. I took hikes by myself. I went to movies by myself. Once I knew that I could have a lot of fun by myself, there was no desperate need to get together with anybody. That really helped. And I was reading, I was taking classes, and so whenever I was in a situation, like on a first date or something, I was an interesting person. It wasn't all about like, are you the one, are you the one? There was like a good conversation to have. And I think I probably went on, 15 first dates or something after I stopped having the sick relationships and before I met my husband. There was a little while in there. I was working on healing my life. I didn't want a boyfriend. But I did start practicing very casual dating, and if I got asked out or, it would happen, I would just have a casual coffee, maybe dinner date and talk to people. Lightning never struck, no attraction. That's the thing. You said 99% of people aren't attractive to you. That's fine. You don't need, more than that. You don't need more than that. Attraction is a strange beast, it just comes, and I don't know about you, but what's attractive to me a lot is when we can have really good conversations and laugh, and I feel like I can be myself. That's attractive. But for me to be myself, I've got to be comfortable with myself. I've got to have a little bit of experience of being myself and not just sad and not just stuck or trapped or feeling the emptiness, but like living life. And so that's what I'm going to suggest to you. Don't worry too much. See if you can take your focus off everything that happened to you. You've explored it. You've done 5 years of therapy on that. Good job. Take your focus now and go, how do I become the dignified, responsible, boundaried, beautiful, capable woman I am meant to be? All right? That's your assignment. And to focus on those things. It doesn't have to do with other people. It'll have to do with other people in terms of if you think back and you realize that maybe you slacked off on something that you were responsible for, or you were snippy with somebody. You'll be dealing with that. And I encourage you, you might want to take the dating class, but whether you do or you don't, write down what's important and put at the top, cannot be entangled with another woman or wife. Just go ahead and write that down. That's off limits. You are going to feel so much freer when you know what your boundaries are and you're friends with your boundaries and you're comfortable and you've practiced holding them. Now good things can happen. A lack of boundaries is what isolates us. So that's how I see it, Amyra. So for everybody watching, if you're relating to Amyra and you want to hear more about what I say about how a lack of boundaries isolates you, I have a video lined up for you right here, and I will see you very soon.